السلام. Yes, sister, stay as you are, please, for a few minutes. Sisters, don't stand out. Stay here for a few minutes. For the sister who, Jazakallah khair, said, the kids are bothering them. Yes, there's a problem going on every year. It's not going to be stopped till no more children. Just 1 second, let me finish, please. I listen to you. Please. To solve the problem, inshallah ta'ala, we request the fathers 3 times and the mother once. The mother have been suffering with the kids for at least 11 months. And Rasulullah said, mother. Yes? In Ramadan, I'm going to say something else. Not to contradict the hadith, no. We have to honor the mother in Ramadan, who like to pray the Taraweeh prayer, that is her right, and not to be in the church for her kids, and the father have to take care about the kids. This is number 1. If the father, he is with us here, and his wife is there, and their kids are playing, now it's almost, few minutes, 11:30, 12:30, more after midnight, the kids have too much sugar in their blood. You cannot control them. You cannot control the kids. I have the kids, I have wrong kids. Too much sugar in their blood. Number 1, the responsibility of the father 3 times for Ramadan. Number 2, inshallah ta'ala, for the sisters who are here now, take the word of Imam Shibli. Every night from now to the day of the Eid, after the 8 rak'ah and the people leave, please walk to this area and you pray. And if anybody tell you, publicly, privately, go back, pray in that area, and the children will bother you, tell them Imam Shibli said it publicly, this is our spot after the 8 rak'ah. Number 3, inshallah ta'ala, for the sisters by themselves, work among yourselves. Take a care. Salat al-Taraweeh, it's not fard. Salat al-Taraweeh, it is not fard. Salat al-Taraweeh is not fard. Neither the president, our brother Al Patel, I love him in the sake of Allah, neither brother Muhammad Ashraf Chairman, nor me, nor Sheikh Ismail, we are not going to take care about your kids. I'm telling you, we are not going to take about your kids. Among yourself, 3 sisters, 4 sisters, try to find those people, kids, who are their mother, talk to them nicely, and take a shift. Tonight I will donate my night as a sister. I'm coming to you, shall I give you floor at the Salat al-Fajr. If you take care about your kids, there is no need to bother the man with them. What are those people who do with your kids? It's your kids, or the kids of your Muslim sisters. Through such 3 suggestions. Implement them every night you come here from now till the Eid. 3 of you take care about those kids, inshallah ta'ala. I forget the second one I mentioned. Work on it, inshallah ta'ala. Volunteer, the responsibility of the father, volunteer for that. Let me give the floor for the sister before she leaves. If I have a heart attack, she will have a heart attack. We'll die as a shaheed. Let her take her stress out. I am ready to take it, and may Allah reward you. Say Bismillah. Say Bismillah.
Bismillah.
Yes.
This kid's supposed to be in bed from 8 o'clock, not 12 o'clock. If I could divers and come sit here, they will collect them. And they can spend the millions to get these kids away. That's what I want to say.
Jazakallah.
And I can do it.
Jazakallah.
Okay? Because that's not fair for the kids. I feel sorry for the kids. The kids have to be in bed. And also we have babysitter over there, and every day we say that. Why this kid is not there? If the mother needs to pray 4 or 8 rak'ah tarawih, she has to send it them.
Jazakallah. May Allah
If I
reward you.
say something wrong,
Yes.
you tell me if I say something.
Jazakallah.
That's why I say I can't stop.
Yes.
I could die best after you tell me. You
Ma-
said you're gonna call the police for the people drive working here. I can call privacy.
When you call the police, tell them Imam Shibli asked me to call the police. When you call the police
No,
for...
not. You said that. You said call the police.
Yes.
I said I can call privacy for these kids too.
Yes.
They might have better homes than
If you see any kid was suffering by not mother or father take care about them, in America we call child abuse, divest, the kids will be gone. Let us read Surah Asr before we leave. Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. Can we read Surah Asr? Sister, Hajjah, can we read Surah Asr? Yes or no?
Yes, I can.
Okay, Jazakallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. May Allah accept your salah. Ameen ya Rabbal Alamin. No, we finish. No more talk, please. You have to sit one out. I don't do that. وعليكم السلام. Sorry to take your time. You can see. Ramadan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Inshallah, we will continue with our program for the next 15 to 20 minutes. If you have time, please have a seat. Inshallah, we will be discussing the role of the messengers and prophets. And so inshallah, 15 minutes or so. We'll get started in a minute or two. Jazakumullah khair.
Videos usually posted on ISCJ-TV?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because my phone doesn't have time to stay. I only want to watch these things.
It's live right now. For 30 people on the channel. What's your name again?
Yusuf.
Yusuf. Okay. Let's see your channel. No, I think we're good. Yes.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We will continue with our theme of the month, which is Al-Quran. Quran itself says, "Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran," that this is the month of Ramadan, and in it there has been revelation that has been sent down, or the Quran has been sent down. So I wanted to continue with that same theme or same message of the Quran. There are a few ayat that I wanted to mention. And these are seminal in terms of our understanding of the role of the messengers and the prophets. So in Arabic, we're talking about Rasul and Nabi, or plural, Rusul and Anbiya. So what we see in this, inshallah, and I'm going to ask you, inshallah, to actually grab a translation of the Quran. And if you are able to do it, sisters as well as the brothers, because we're going to go over Surah Al-Qamar, inshallah, some ayat from it. But we're going to go over it, and there's a concept that is very important for us to understand. And I'll start with a question. The Quran talks about Al-Kafirin. Who is a kafir? So it's a question, who is a kafir? Is this a person who's your neighbor? Is this a person like Abu Jahl who fought the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Is kafir someone who is a Jew, a Christian today? Or is a kafir somebody who was a mushrik or polytheist at the time of the Prophet? Or maybe a Jew or Christian at the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So we have, this is a central question that we should ask ourselves. When the Quran talks about al-kafir, the disbelievers, right? Who are these people? Because what we do know that the Quran, when it talks about al-kafir, it also says that they will be in hellfire forever and ever. It talks about that the wrath of God will be upon this kafir, right? This individual or the group of people that the Quran classifies as kuffar. So this is a central question that we should ask. And then the role of the prophets and messengers. What's the difference between prophets and messengers, right? This is also a central question. And then, why were all these prophets and messengers sent? Meaning, if God gave us reasoning, if God gave us an intellect, why revelation was needed? Right? If intellect, reasoning was there, why messengers? We could pretty much have a good idea about what is good and bad, right? Telling the truth in terms of general idea. Telling the truth is a good thing. Lying is a bad habit. Cheating is a bad thing, right? Anything that eating food that is filthy is not something good. People recognize that these are universal things. But then why the messengers were sent? And is revelation opposed to reasoning, or is revelation, meaning that which is sent, compatible with reasoning, right? With intellect. So these are some of the questions that are central, and the Quran discusses them in length, and we should also be able to, from reading the book of God, we should also be able to read and understand, as Muslims, how we understand our deen. Right? This is something that is very much needed for us to understand, right? So I want to, inshallah, utilize certain ayat as I would read these. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions the reason and the role for the messenger. So He mentioned, كَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا فِيكُمْ رَسُولًا مِنْكُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتِنَا. Right, that's number one. وَيُزَكِّيكُمْ. Number two. Right, the first one is to recite let me give you the translations. How about that? Just as we have sent down among you a messenger from yourselves, meaning the Prophet ﷺ, reciting to you our verses, that's rule number one, and purifying you, tazkiyah, number two, and teaching you the book and wisdom, that's number three, and four, I guess you could say, and teaching you that which you did not know. Right. So the role of the messenger is clarified here. That they came, or this messenger, meaning the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, is here because he wanted to recite the verses of God, number one, to purify you, number two, purify your hearts, and to teach you book, meaning the commands. Right? Musa ﷺ was given commands, and then hikmah, meaning the wisdom here, or the good character. Right, good character that is embodied in good people. Right, so this is what he came to. And another tafsir that some of the fuqaha, they said it's actually the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and so many other reasoning. Right, but this is a central ayah that talks about the role of the prophets and messengers. The other ayah, it talks about what happened, and I think that would clarify why all of the prophets and messengers came. Okay, it talks about how humanity was one. All of the human beings were on one religion. Nobody differed. But then differences came due to something, right? And then it clarified. كَانَ النَّاسُ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا. Right? This is an ayah from, I believe, Surah Al-Baqarah. Mankind was on one religion before their deviation. Then Allah sent down the prophets as bringers of good tidings and warners, and sent down with them the scriptures, in truth to judge between the people concerning that in which they differed. And none differed over the scripture except those who were given it, after the clear proofs came to them and jealous animosity amongst themselves. Right? Why? Because their hearts went crooked, so they went in different directions. And Allah guided those who believed to the truth concerning that over which they differed by His permission. And Allah guides whom He will to a straight path. Right? So this is clarified that humanity used to be on the straight path. Adam alayhi salam, Idris alayhi salam, right, till Nuh alayhi salam. We don't know how many people came between and how many years between Nuh alayhi salam and Adam alayhi salam. But when Nuh alayhi salam came, one of the central things that happened was people adapted shirk, right? So they deviated from the right path. And then what we'll see from after Nuh alayhi salam, right, who's the messenger that we know? Ibrahim alayhi salam, right? There are a few Sheep alayhi salam and others, right? These are prophets. Idris alayhi salam, is he a prophet or a messenger? Did he bring a book? No. So a prophet is somebody, all the messengers are prophets, but the messengers are more like they're central figures. They bring a book with them, right? Or they bring a new sharia, right? So they're important people within their community. And when a messenger comes, this is a rule that we have to know from the Quran. When a messenger comes, then the decision is made for that community, whether they're going to continue or they will be destroyed. So Surah Al-Qamar is very clear, and we could recite some of these verses, inshallah. Surah Al-Qamar clarifies this concept of the role of messengers and prophets. Why? Because all of the people who came, right, the communities, the prophets would come and they would say, be good, be upright, believe in one God. There's a day of judgment, so be good, have good character. And all these communities would say, like Nuh alayhi salam community, or Ibrahim alayhi salam's community, right? His own father was somebody who was an idol worshipper. Or like the community of Ad, right? Prophet Saleh was sent there. Or the community of Musa alayhi salam, right? These people were bad. They did not listen. They actually made a calf, right, into an idol, right? And they used to worship that. And then the people of Lut alayhi salam, like Lot, what was their crime? Sexual deviation, right? So they went in a really wrong direction in terms of what God had commanded them. So they went from the right direction into wrong direction. And then the prophets and until one last messenger would come. And when the messenger comes, right, and he comes with a message, a clear sign. So Salih alayhi salam, right, to Thamud, the camel comes out of the mountain, right? There's some miracle. And after that, there's no more excuse for the people. There's no more excuse, because what they were denying was that there is a day of judgment. So what God does is that He shows them there's a small example of day of judgment by putting them in this life through a judgment. Right? So what will happen to the people who disbelieve in the ayat or verses of God and the messengers? What would happen? They will be destroyed, right? They will be in hellfire forever. And guess what happens in this life? They're destroyed. They go through a punishment. Right? That's why there's always, the Quran's talking about punishment of this people or community that and that. And it's for Quraysh, because the Prophet Muhammad has come, Quraysh to see this and learn from their examples. That's the reason why the Quran always keeps mentioning about these earlier communities. Ad, Thamud, the people of Madian, right? The people, except for one community that survived, right? And they were not punished. They saw the punishment coming, and then they made tawbah. Which community is that?
Is it Bani Israel?
Bani Israel.
Prophet's name. He left his people and
Yes.
went out, and then later on they were forgiven because the prophet was not there with them at the time.
Very nice. Who's that prophet? Yunus alayhi salam, right? Dannun. He's mentioned.
I made up for my past mistake.
Yeah. Good stuff. So Prophet Yunus alayhi salam, right? Except for his people, because he had left his people, he left the command of God, right? He did not, there's confusion maybe perhaps to the prophet, or maybe he thought, they're doomed. Now that the punishment's coming, they're doomed. I'm just going to leave, right? Because similarly, I want you to understand this. The same thing happens with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When does he leave these people? When is Prophet Muhammad leaving his people?
When they're driving him out?
When they're driving him out, but what incident happened? The hijrah. You see why it's very important? Because hijrah is the period or the time when after that a punishment, they're qualified for a punishment. The Meccans, right? The Quraysh are qualified for punishment, and when would the punishment would be delivered? After? Think about it, like all this time, right? All these nations were destroyed. And Surah Al-Qamar, if you read it, اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر, that the time of the hour has come, or it draws near, and the moon has been split asunder. Right? The moon has been broken into pieces. And after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions all the examples of the people that I've mentioned, right? We should go home, because I'm going to finish inshallah very soon, within 5 to 7 minutes. But we should go home and read Surah Al-Qamar. And in it, it talks about all these people. They denied the messengers, and the punishment came. So when people denied the Prophet ﷺ and drove him out of the city, what happened? When did the punishment come? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, He says, قاتلهم الله قاتلهم يعذبهم الله بأيديكم. He says, fight against them, and God shall punish them through your hands, through the hands of Muslims, right? At that time. And then what happens is that at Badr, right, the very first incident, or the very first battle that happened, 40 of the leaders of the Meccans are killed. Everybody who was a leader, except there are 2 people who are left, right, from the leadership, because leaders are those who deny. Except for Abu Lahab, and the second person, you know who that is?
Abu Sufyan.
Abu Sufyan, very good, mashallah. Except for these 2 people, everybody's wiped down. Everybody, right? Utbah, right? It's called Shayba. All these other people who were there, they're all wiped out. They're all killed. Why? Because this is a punishment. And they said that before we would swing our swords, we saw that the necks of the kuffar, right, were hurled, right? They were killed before we would go after them. And we weren't even finished, like, swinging our swords. And this would happen, and the angels would come down, right? In Surah Al-Anfal and Surah Al-Imran, right? It talks about what happened in Badr. So that's why it's important for us to recognize, because it mentions that the punishment of God comes in that surah. So the Prophet ﷺ, right, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, is also following in the path. So people deny the messengers leave their people, and after they leave, right, Lut ﷺ, he leaves the people, right, and he tells them, don't turn back to them. Nuh ﷺ, how does he leave his people? He also makes a hijrah, right? When the thunder and then the rain and then the water comes out, he has built a ship and he leaves his people, and people laugh at him. Oh, we're just gonna. His own son says, "I'll climb the mountain," but they're all sunk, right? The Salih alayhi salam, the camel, the she camel is killed, and he says, "Now you're on your own," right? And then they're all destroyed by a thunder or a bolt, right? Or a scream in other cases. So these are all punishment that comes. And what's important here again is continuation of this is that the Prophet ﷺ, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, right? He's there to explain to us that his life and so I'm coming back to the question that I initially posed, who is a kafir, right? Who is the person who disbelieves, right? And that is the most important point, because these are the people who deny the prophets and messengers. So it's not people who are living with us in our neighborhood, right? You don't say these are, if I'm a Muslim, then my neighbor, if he's not a Muslim, then he is or she is a kafir. That's a wrong approach. The people who are called kuffar in the Quran, right? They're not the people that we know who are living next door to us. Why? Because we know those people who denied God and His messengers, right? After that, khalas, like they don't have any excuse with God, right? We haven't even delivered the message, right? And who knows what's in the hearts of the people? Because a kafir, by definition, right? Literally, a farmer who covers up a seed, right? And then so he covers it up. And a kafir, right, is somebody who knows the truth, but he covers it up. He does not want to believe in it. He actually fights against it, Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'll give you the ayah from the Quran, He says, كَيْفَ يَهْدِ اللَّهُ قَوْمًا كَفَرُوا بَعْدَ إِيمَانِهِمْ وَشَهِدُوا أَنَّ الرَّسُولَ حَقٌّ وَجَاءَهُمْ الْبَيِّنَاتُ وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. So He says, how shall Allah guide a people who disbelieved after their belief and had witnessed that the messenger is true and clear signs had come to them? Like, these people know that he's telling the truth, and they have seen these signs, right? The shaq al-qamar, the splitting of the moon, they have seen the messenger there, and they knew that he was on guidance. And Allah does not guide the wrongdoer, the people. So these are the people who are called kuffar in the Quran, right? And that's why when we are talking to our kids, and so what's the category of these people who are around us today, right? They're called non-Muslims. In the Quran just doesn't talk about two people, the people who believe and people who do kufr. It talks about Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. It also talks about Ya ayyuhan nas, O humanity. It also talks about Ya bani Adam, O children of Adam. Right. So we have to recognize the nuance that's in the book of Allah, and not simply split it into, if you're not a Muslim, then you're a kafir. Right. And the Prophet ﷺ, if you look at the seerah of the Prophet, right, he was not interested in the Muslim community or himself calling people kuffar, right? That so-and-so who claims to be a Muslim, he's a kafir, right? But rather, if you look at it, his whole mission was to give da'wah to people, to call them to Islam, not to say that you are a rejecter of faith, right? You're somebody who's rejected, you're a kafir now. But rather, his whole mission was to call them towards Islam, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He clarifies, and He calls people kafir, then definitely, obviously, we know that they are kuffar. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not pinpoint, then we have no business of taking God's business, right, in our own hands. So this is something we need to be careful, because a lot of times what happens that people do confuse the matter. The last few things I want to mention, I think I'm kind of over time. Very important factor I had mentioned about revelation, and which is wahi, right? Quran, scriptures, right? The Bible, Torah, Zabur, Injil, and then reasoning, right? People have been able to reason, and if you look into it, there are two schools of thought, right? And revelation is the third, I would say. The two schools are this, and this is very important for us to recognize. Number one, which is kind of like the Western school, and it's formed by the Socrates, I guess. He was like the father of the intellectuals, right? You could say, right? Plato came after him, right? Aristotle after, right? All these people. Socrates was there as a teacher, but he was not on guidance in terms of reasoning. He was all pure, reasoning, logic, right? Thinking through things, questioning things. And then on the Eastern side, you had somebody who's called the Buddha, right? And that's his model, and that is the spiritual model, right? Where one, you have very logical, reasoning, and then philosophy, right? And then the other model is you have somebody who's spiritual, who's trying to find God from within. The reasoning model also, because Socrates said, there has to be one God, right? Because they discussed all that too. And then Buddha too, he never said in his life that you should worship me, right? It was the people, that's known, right? Even in their teachings. But what we know is that these two never claimed to be, or we don't know that they ever claimed to be messengers or prophets, right? The third model that we have is actually, so somebody who tries from within to connect with God, right? The spiritual model. And within our even Muslim, right? Muslims amongst them, you have the people on the tariqah, right? Or some of the spirituals, or some of the Sufis, right? Who try to have that connection with God, that direct connection. That's sometimes what they call, right? Or we have the other group, right, of the people who are very much into rationalism, philosophers, right? You have the Mu'tazili from the early generation or so. So these are the two ways that the people, humanities actually have tried to find God, try to reason and have a way to connect with God. And then the third one, and this is where prophets and messengers come in. That guide, and it's not human intuition, like human beings are trying to find God and what is good or bad, but rather the revelation comes from the top, right? And that model is what we believe and what we follow, right? Right? Obviously, we don't follow somebody who says, God said this to me last night, right? We don't listen to the people who say that, and we definitely don't listen to people in terms of religion and God who say, well, it logically doesn't make sense, right, or something like that. But rather, we believe when it comes to religion. Why? Because the prophets and messengers. What I'm trying to get to is this, inshallah. That's the last point. The prophets and messengers are different from all the other humanity. You could have Einstein, Buddha, Marx, right? You could Karl Marx. You could put Newton, right? Anybody you think as like the most intellectual or spiritual person, right? Put them in one corner and put all the prophets and messengers on another side. All these other people who have helped out humanity, right, with their gifts, right, their vision only is good for this life. The prophets and messengers, their role is different because their vision is what God has shown them or what God has given to these individuals. And that is the central thing that we are all afraid of. And that is what would happen to me when I die. None of the poets and philosophers and intellectuals or political leaders, they can guide you about what will happen when you die. None of them. We know this, right? All of that which we know what would happen after we die comes from where? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But how do we know today?
Through prophets.
Through prophets, right? What other sources? Books, scriptures, right? This is where we find. This is a teaching that has been passed down. None of the other people would ever be able to do that, right? So that's why it's important to recognize the role of the prophets and messengers is not, including the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to teach people Arabic grammar, or to teach people poetry, or to teach people how to dress, right? Or to teach people how to build a mosque, or to teach people all these other things. But rather, what their role is to worship one God and to have good character. That's it. Worship one God and be pure in your dealings with people, right? To be good with one another. So this is what we understand from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just to summarize what we understand and find in the book, who's a kafir, the role and of the importance of messengers and prophets, and the day of judgment, how it's important, and what they have been trying to teach and give us, inshallah. So we do not confuse the role of the prophets and messengers as somebody who's teaching poetry or philosophy or even people, they say, let's look at the diet of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Well, 99% of the people cannot follow the diet of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam because the way he lived, right? But his role was to teach us good manners. His role was to teach us to be on Tawheed, right? To worship God as one. So, Jazakumullah khair. Thank you for listening, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If you have any quick questions, then I'll handle it. Maybe if I left something out. Other than that, inshallah, I think we're done for today. Yes.
Are you an
What's that?
Are you an Northern Matter scholar?
Am I from amongst? No, I am not. Yeah. I'm not from the scholars. You don't have to take my opinion. So, yes. This is something we're sharing, inshallah, tonight. Anybody else? All right, so inshallah, let's recite Ayatul Kursi, inshallah, before if you go to sleep, then that's great. If not, that is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum. Wa la yuhituna bi shay'in min ilmihi illa bima sha'a. Wasi'a kursiyuhu. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.